Say, kids, what time is it?
On the issue of the UN inspectors, the CIA had made up intelligence on weapons of mass destruction. Made up intelligence.
To provide a legal basis for the war.
The image has been created through the media.
Good on you for turning out in these circumstances. I'd like to welcome you to our peaceful protest this morning. And first up, I'd like to introduce long-standing grassroots activist Jenny Monroe to welcome us to country.
Thanks everybody for turning up this morning. The country we're on today belongs to the Gadigal people. The name of the harbour is Talbagooli or Warren. Botany Bay is Kamay. The most famous Aboriginal person that was a Gadigal man was Bennelong. You have Bennelong Point down here where they're all meeting. That's named after him. His traditional homeland was actually Goat Island, which is further up the harbour. The time that we were invaded in 1770 and 1788, the Gadigal people defended their land, fought against the troopers that came here against muskets. And the man that led those people in 1788 and up until his death in 1802 was a man called Pemulwuy. He is the hero of the Aboriginal resistance in this country. He stands as a monument to all that has gone wrong with black and white relations in this country. Pemulwuy was a hero that defended our land until the time he was killed. They beheaded the man and took his head to England, a man called Joseph Banks. Part of what's wrong in this country is the spirit is wrong. Bennelong, Pemulwuy, his spirit does not rest because his head is still in England. Our people do not rest because we have been oppressed, subjugated and subject to laws that are none of our creation for some 220 years in our own country. We've now become the ultimate irony in our own land. We are trespassers in our own country. The intervention in the Northern Territory is a classic representation of that. George Bush is to get the uranium from the territory, move those people off their land as quick as possible for as long as possible so that he can get his hands on the land. After they've got the uranium out, they will then truck the waste back up there and bury it on our people's homeland in the centre so that they will be the only people that get sick from eating yellow cake in this country or in the world. Man Howard is the worst Prime Minister we have ever elected in the history of this country. He is the most racist Prime Minister bar none. We all need to go green. Go green! Vote Bob Brown in for Prime Minister. Stand green independence in every seat and vote that man in as Prime Minister for this country because he's the only man with enough principle to lead for all of us. Remember that on election day. Thank you.
We have got the right to protest, and we are going to assert our right to protest, and no one's going to take it away from us.
They know that democracy comes when you organise, when you're not intimidated, when you stand up, when you can't. The city's been shut down, barricades have been thrown up everywhere. Everywhere Bush travels, he has to erect a fortress to protect himself. What the hell is this man so afraid of? I'll tell you what he's afraid of. He's afraid of the people. The Vietnam War ended when the masses mobilized in the streets and when soldiers put down their weapons and refused to fight. Since I've been here, all I've heard about from the media Is this a supposed threat of violence from the protesters? But nobody is talking about the issues behind these protests. No one is talking about the real violence. The real violence that only those of us that have been there can truly understand. It's the slaughter of 600,000 Iraqis. It's the complete disregard for human life that us as soldiers are conditioned to have when we're in Iraq. When we invaded in 2003, we killed men, we killed women, and yes, we killed children. I saw buses filled with women and children blown wide open by tank rounds. I saw our command legalize murder when we went weapons free, when we changed the rules of engagement. This is the same thing they did in Vietnam, but they called it free fire zones. If it moves, it dies, and it did. We were never there to help those people. I was ordered to bury the humanitarian food I was given because we were told we are the United States Marine Corps. We are not the United States Peace Corps. We have one mission, and that is to fight. And that's what we did. 4.5 years later, this man's lies are known throughout the world, and yet he continues to act with impunity. The only progress we will see in Iraq is when all foreign troops have left.
John Howard's talk of long-term aspirational targets is rubbish.
Bullshit.
But it's worse than rubbish. It's worse than nothing. What he is doing this weekend is trying to collude with his friend George W. Bush to undermine the international agreements about tackling global warming. He's trying to undermine things like the Kyoto Protocol that talks about having specific binding targets to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. But yesterday our Prime Minister signed a deal with Vladimir Putin from Russia to sell Australian uranium to Russia. That is going to mean that we will see more nuclear waste and more nuclear weapons. We can guarantee that every single atom of Australian uranium that is sold to Russia will become radioactive nuclear waste. We've got a special responsibility, and we can carry out that responsibility seriously by ending the mining of uranium in this country.
On Wednesday, George Bush and John Howard announced their nuclear pact, escalating uranium mining, dotting nuclear power stations along the Australian coastline, and turning Australian universities into research and training grounds for a dangerous and unsustainable industry. We know uranium is a dirty fuel. We know it is used to create nuclear waste, and we know that it creates radioactive waste that is toxic and deadly for 250,000 years. And we know that after 50 years in the global nuclear cycle, there is still no safe way to store nuclear waste. Despite what Bush and Howard say, nuclear is no solution to climate change. And across Australia, we will stand up, we will resist, and we will stop Howard and his nuclear agenda. There are a host of energy options available to us. Wind, solar, solar thermal, hot rocks, small-scale hydro, energy efficiency, and the list goes on.
I say get out, George Bush, you're not welcome in this country. We've been invaded by big US corporations who are trashing this country, stealing our jobs and robbing the people of their resources and their rights. The leaders of the world, they can't go anywhere. Wherever the World Trade Organization goes, wherever the IMF goes, wherever APEC goes, wherever the World Economic Forum goes, they have to lock the people out because of their filthy policies that are standing over people, murdering people all throughout the world, and it's got to stop.
Through their course, reinforce new laws with the aim to control the